March 13th, 1942. The world is at war. But the battle that morning wasn't fought overseas. It erupted in a quiet Virginia café. The sound of gunfire shattered the calm of Abingdon's Wall Street. Inside Pat's Café, two FBI agents faced two desperate men army deserters armed with stolen .45 revolvers. When the smoke cleared, one of the Bureau's youngest agents lay dead. His name was Hubert J. Treacy Jr. This is the story of the 1942 Abingdon Shootout, a tragedy that stunned the FBI, rocked a small Appalachian town, and left a lasting scar on American law enforcement. In 1942, America stood on the edge of chaos. Just 3 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States had mobilized millions of men. Fear, rationing, and wartime uncertainty weighed heavy on every citizen. Across the country, thousands of young soldiers cracked under pressure. Some deserted. Most were caught quietly, but a few, like Charles J. Lovett and James Edward Testerman, turned violent. Lovett was a Philadelphia drifter, 21 years old, with a history of drunken fights and insubordination. Testerman was a Virginia native, just 22, stationed at Fort Oglethorpe in Georgia. Both served in the 3rd Cavalry's machine gun troop. Both hated Army discipline, and both wanted out. Their escape would become one of the bloodiest chapters in FBI history. It began late on March 11th, 1942. Inside the barracks at Fort Oglethorpe, the two men plotted desertion. They waited until lights out, when most soldiers were asleep. Then, in the darkness, they ambushed Sergeant Clifton Hall. Lovett struck him with an iron bell, fracturing his skull. Hall survived barely. The deserters looted the armory, stealing 4 .45 caliber Smith & Wesson revolvers and 100 rounds of ammunition. They slipped through the night, leaving behind blood, confusion, and the start of a nationwide alert. They flagged down a taxi near Chattanooga and ordered the driver to head north. Gun barrels glinted in the dark. After miles of silent terror, they robbed the driver of $23 and dumped him on a Tennessee roadside. Then they ditched the cab in Sweetwater and caught a bus to Knoxville. By morning, they'd bought a small handbag to hide their pistols. By afternoon, they were gone again, heading into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Their destination, Abingdon, Virginia. A sleepy town of 3,000 people and the hometown of Testerman's girlfriend. They thought they could disappear there, but the FBI was already closing in. At the FBI's Knoxville field office, teletype messages were flying. 2 deserters, armed, dangerous, wanted for kidnapping and assault. Director J. Edgar Hoover himself was watching. Wartime meant zero tolerance for military fugitives. Every desertion was a threat to morale. Every deserter was an enemy within. Agents traced the men's path north. A bus clerk in Knoxville remembered 2 soldiers headed for Abingdon. That lead was enough. Special agents Hubert J. Treacy Jr. and Charles L. Tignor were dispatched. They reached Abingdon at dawn on March 13th, wearing plain clothes, revolvers holstered beneath their jackets. Abingdon was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone. Tree-lined streets, a single main square, and on Wall Street, Pat's Café, a small diner with wooden booths and the smell of fried eggs and coffee. At 9:35 a.m., Treacy and Tignor spotted 2 young men in uniform walking calmly down the street. They matched the descriptions perfectly. The deserters stepped into the café and took a booth. Treacy and Tignor followed quietly. The waitress poured coffee. The soldiers chatted, one nervously drumming his fingers on the table. Treacy approached. "Good morning, gentlemen. We're federal agents. May we see your identification?" For 1 second, time froze. Then chaos. Lovett's hand moved first. A flash of metal, the roar of a .45. The bullet tore through Tignor's right arm, spinning him backward. Before Treacy could draw, Lovett fired again. The round struck Treacy in the face. He fell instantly. Testerman rose and fired too, hitting Treacy again as he collapsed near the booth. Tignor, bleeding badly, tried to raise his gun with his left hand. Lovett shot him in the chest. patrons screamed and ducked beneath tables, coffee cups shattered. In less than 10 seconds, it was over. 2 FBI agents down, one dead, one clinging to life. Lovett and Testerman bolted out the door, weapons drawn, vanishing into the morning streets. Abingdon erupted. Police radios crackled. Roads were blocked. Armed men took up positions at every exit. The FBI declared a full-scale manhunt. As the news spread, the town that had never seen a homicide now faced a war on its doorstep. Lovett and Testerman sprinted through alleys, trying to find a car. They failed once, then forced a local at gunpoint to surrender his vehicle. As they sped away, an Abingdon police officer, Troy Combs, appeared at an intersection. He opened fire. Bullets shattered glass, ripping through the deserter's car. They returned fire wildly, one round grazing a passing woman. Then they ditched the car and fled on foot into the outskirts of town. By mid-morning, Abingdon was surrounded. A posse of over 100 men formed. Local officers, FBI agents, and volunteers from the nearby Bristol Civilian Defence School. They combed fields and barns, searching house to house. Lovett and Testerman were finally cornered in the basement of an abandoned home. They shouted curses and threats. Shots echoed from the windows. The standoff dragged for nearly an hour. Finally, agents fired tear gas. The deserters coughed, stumbled out and dropped their revolvers. They were taken into custody, bruised, furious, but alive. The siege of Abingdon was over. The aftermath was grim. At the hospital, Agent Hubert J. Treacy Jr., just 28 years old, was pronounced dead. He had taken multiple bullets, one in the back as he fell. His partner, Tignor, survived barely. He would live another 60 years, honored as one of the Bureau's oldest surviving agents. Abingdon mourned, shops closed, flags were lowered, and at Pat's Café, the floors were scrubbed clean, but the bloodstains never truly faded. A month later, on April 15, 1942, Charles Lovett and James Testerman faced trial at the U.S. District Court in Abingdon. The courtroom overflowed. Reporters, locals, FBI officials. The evidence was overwhelming. Ballistics matched the 45 casings. Witnesses identified them without hesitation. Agent Tignor testified in person, arm still bandaged. After deliberating less than 3 hours, the jury returned guilty verdicts. Both men were sentenced to life imprisonment at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Later, additional federal charges for kidnapping and car theft were added, ensuring neither would ever be free again. They were rumored to have been transferred to Alcatraz in the late 1940s. Justice had come, but at a terrible price. For the FBI, this was more than tragedy. It was a turning point. Treacy was the 13th agent killed in the line of duty, and his death reshaped Bureau protocol. Hoover ordered sweeping reforms, enhanced firearms training for all field agents, improved coordination with local law enforcement, faster warrant distribution across state lines. The Abingdon lesson became required reading at Quantico. For the town of Abingdon, the memory endured quietly. Officer Troy Combs, who helped block the fugitives, became a local hero. Generations later, his family would help dedicate a memorial plaque to Agent Treacy. In 1990, the FBI named its Richmond Division headquarters after him, and in 2017, Treacy's grandson stood beside that plaque as agents saluted 8 decades after the gunfire faded. The story still echoes through Virginia hills. Pat's Café no longer stands, but the spot where Treacy fell is marked by memory and reverence. Each March, flowers appear there. No one knows who leaves them. Historians see the Abingdon Shootout as a symbol, a tale of courage, chaos, and how even in small towns, war finds its way home. It is the story of 2 young soldiers who ran from duty and 1 young agent who ran toward it. Hubert J. Treacy Jr. was 28 years old. He had a wife, Eileen, and a son he would never meet. That son grew up to tell his father's story to a generation that nearly forgot. Time has blurred many wartime headlines, but some stories refuse to fade. The crack of gunfire in a small-town cafe, the courage of a wounded agent raising his gun, the echo of justice in a courtroom filled with grief. This was no battlefield, no foreign war. This was America in 1942, when violence, fear, and heroism collided on a quiet morning in Abingdon. And from that tragedy, the FBI's modern code of courage was born.